process through conversation. That's what it's all about. Um, and so this is a little different because we're opening it up to everybody. So there's people here that aren't from Atlanta. So we want to make sure that we are sort of keep that in mind. But so let me just sort of rewind. We've got a pretty good group now. We've got 33 people. This is ATL Photo Night, a virtual edition. Kevin and I threw this together. Kevin Liles, my partner. We're co-founders of ATL Photo Night, and we threw this together pretty quickly as everything, changed really quickly, and we suddenly were all sitting around with no work and figuring out, what do we do? How do we stay creative? So we called one of our friends, Danny Gaitis. It was actually his idea to do this, and Danny lives in Brooklyn. He came down last year for a real ATL Photo Night session. He's a creative business coach and also a photographer, I guess we should say former photographer, professionally. And so his insight into what we do is just so spot on and just perfect. So we've got Danny here. I want to thank, first of all, our sponsors and our usual sponsors, Professional Photo Resource and KEH Camera, who have been sponsors for ATL Photo Night for quite a while now and really supported us. If you don't know, PPR is one of the largest and oldest photo rental houses in the Southeast. They're based in Atlanta here. And, they're open, but by appointment only. So you can still go there. Make sure you call first, make an appointment. They have a staff of employees just like every other place that's struggling right now. So if you can find a way to support them, please do. KEH Camera is also based in the Atlanta area, and I was using it well before I even before I lived in Atlanta, and so they're the world's largest provider of used equipment in the world. So you can find everything from them, and it's also a great place to sell your gear. So as well, you can't go see them physically, but they have people you can call on the phone to say, I need this gear for an upcoming project, to help you put together a list. It's also a place where you can sell gear. These are hard times, photographers, we're always sort of moving gear and figuring things out. So you can sell stuff to them. It's quick, it's easy. Get rid of some stuff, make room for something else. And Photo Night, ATL Photo Night, real quick, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. That's the best way to sort of keep track of the next events that are coming up. Everything's up in the air. We were supposed to have a March event and then an April event in person like we usually do. And things are changing. So I think we're adapting as we go along, and we're probably going to be doing some more figuring out ways to communicate virtually like this, and maybe doing more sessions like this. Thank you all again so much for joining us. This is really cool. And, this is the first time we've ever done it. So if something goes a little weird, just be patient. If you get kicked off, come back on. We'll add you. I'm going to hand it off to Kevin to do a little intro of Danny, sort of tell you how we're going to the workflow of this, and then we'll get started right away. So Kevin, my buddy. Is Kevin frozen? Okay, I'm gonna let's see, I'm gonna unmute Danny. Hey Danny, are you there?
Hey.
Okay, Danny's here. So I'm gonna take Kevin's role since he's frozen. So like I said, Danny Gaitis is a good friend of ours, a photographer that I worked with and knew when I was in New York at the New York Times. Danny switched his career several years ago and pivoted to become a creative business coach for visual artists, for creative people, not just photographers, but definitely focusing on that because he has that background experience, that understanding. So Danny's going to give us everything that we need to know to cope. I should say he's going to share everything that he has learned to help us cope with this weird, uncertain, just kind of bizarre time. Really quick, just so you can see you can play around with like your view of people, of everyone else here. Some people have their cameras off. That's fine. We have everybody muted automatically, because this is what we're going to do. If you guys look on the right, if you go to like participants on the bottom, it should pull up a list on the side. You should see somewhere an option that says raise hand. It's like a little blue icon. And that's because we're going to have like probably close to 100 people. That's how we're going to do questions. So if you just click that button, and if you can't find it, there's also the chat window. You can like type in your question. We're going to sort of try to field questions that way. And so if you raise your hand, you got a question, we'll click on you. Then you can actually, we'll unmute it so that, because if we have everyone's mics at the same time, I don't know, you guys have probably been on conferences like that where it just becomes this echo chamber of just terrible feedback. So we'll unmute you. You can ask your question, and we can sort of handle the conversation that way. And then at the end, we'll save time for more sort of one-off questions. But so raise the hand, wait for us to sort of get a break in the conversation. We'll field them that way. But I want to turn it over. Kevin, are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Kevin's back and unfrozen. I took over the raising hand. So we're going to turn it over to Danny and let Danny get us rolling. So Danny,
one thing I wanted to add is if you want to, you can message me privately with a question. After we click on you, raised hand. I'm sure you went over that. Just wanted to say you can message on here questions that you have. So
there's a little chat button on the bottom. So Danny's in the, what's crazy about this is that like, no matter what you do, everyone's in the same boat. And I've never, ever experienced anything. None of us have like anything like this where like kind of overnight, everyone's like, can't leave. Like all the jobs are canceled, right? Almost everybody's jobs are canceled or put on hold. So what do we do? Like the answer is not to sit there and wait. Like we've got to stay productive. And I think the advantage that we have, Danny, is that we are used to hustling, right? In this industry, you've got to be like working harder than the next person. You have to go get the work, right? So I think we have that advantage, but we're not impervious to, feeling defeated or getting depressed because, we're all alone in our office for even longer than usual. So just to start off, like, you tell us how what you do is a good, I guess, primer into helping us as creatives figure out the mindset for this new sort of time that we find ourselves in.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys. My name is pronounced Danny Giddis. It's okay. It's okay. You guys, I've heard all the different interpretations, Giddis and Jiddis, and sometimes people just add letters, I don't know, creatively. But you can call me whatever you want. It's all good. And so first of all, I'm a coach, and you can think of what I do as like business therapy. It's not therapy in the clinical sense, but it kind of runs along the same lines. It's much more about achieving goals and getting clarity so that you can think really efficiently and get stuff done much better than you might be able to do if you're kind of just stuck in your own head all the time. And I'm also a trainer. I do like company trainings and leadership trainings and that sort of vein. And I was a photographer and still am to a lesser degree for 15, 13-ish years. Did a lot of New York Times work. That's where I met Ray, like he said, and documentary projects and all kinds of stuff. So I feel your pain personally. I know what it's like. And at the same time, I don't have all the answers. So at no point am I going to say, do this, do that. It'll make you, feel great because, everybody's the same. And like Simon says, do this, and therefore like, you'll be great. The important thing is that it's an exploration. Everybody has a different thing that works for them. And everything we're talking about are just suggestions and ideas and, ways to ask better questions of yourself and approach the situation, maybe with like some more tools in your toolbox. So that said, by the way, if you have video capabilities, please turn on your video, because it's great to have everybody's face in the same room since we're all kind of confined. It's really nice to have a sense of community and see each other's faces and to see expressions and gestures and all that. It really contributes to a sense of community at a time where we really need it. So yeah, and if you have a question, hit raise your hand button, which I think is at the bottom of your screen or at the bottom of your participants box. I forget which one it is, and put any questions you have into the chat box, and we're happy to discuss. Sorry for the extended delay. We're just kind of letting people trickle in because you know how it is. So that said, Ray, I think your question. Can you repeat the question one more time?
This was more of a rambling statement question. I wanted to give you a chance to tell us what you do, and for everyone to start thinking about, how that applies to this time. It's like I said, it's such a weird time where, like, my natural inclination when I'm slow or when I don't have like something pressing is to start like go into hustle mode, like find work, whether it's sending out emails saying, hey, whatever, or working on some kind of new promo. But like, that's kind of all out the window now because there's not really much work happening. So, I just wanted to get your thoughts on a mindset to approach this weird, just really strange time. Like, I can't go to my sort of normal hustle mode mindset, where I'm, going after work and being aggressive with putting my stuff out there. I mean, you can, and maybe that's not, it's not the wrong thing to do, but like, I think the mindset is a little bit different, or should be, for us right now. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is an uncertain time and it's unprecedented. Most of us have not been, in a war scenario, in a Great Depression. In general, we've had our trials and tribulations. I see a lot of millennial general vicinity age people, and we just haven't had as much strife as some other generations. And that doesn't mean that we haven't had uncertainties. And as a creative freelancer or any human being in society, you have trials and tribulations and uncertainties to deal with. So the first thing I want to say is that if you're in a stressed state of mind, it's very difficult to go into that focused hustle where you know what to do. If you're stressed out in a way that is unusual, like what's happening right now, your brain is going to go into this kind of narrow focus. That's just what's normal when you're in a stress response, when you have some sort of stress reaction to what's going on around you. And you're going to try and find similar solutions to what you always do. You go into kind of default mode. You have these like blinders on. But because we're in a different kind of situation, you have to think differently, right? There's this book out there, and and I know more than one person in here will recognize this, but there's this book out there by a famous coach called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and I love the title of the book. I say it all the time because it's so true. What got you here won't get you there. Just because things worked before, they might not necessarily apply to these circumstances. So you have to do things differently in order to adapt. Now, we're all very adaptive people by nature. First of all, we're creative. We're able to respond to people in a way that, we're empathetic. We understand other people. So we're adaptive, but that doesn't mean that adaptivity comes to you naturally if you're stressed. So what you have to do is deal with that stress first. If you're up against a huge block, which is this wall of stress and uncertainty, It could be a really high acute level of stress, or it could be kind of a low level chronic feeling of stress. Either way, it's going to be hard to think differently, to apply that different kind of thinking to this different kind of scenario. So you have to deal with that first. If you don't deal with that, then you could get lucky and find a solution, but it's going to be much more difficult than if you take steps and recognize, like, hey, I have a lot of stress and this is different, so I got to deal with that first in order to be able to then move on and find new solutions, think creatively, and have that expansive creative thinking that is really what we need right now in order to make the most of this situation. So that's kind of the general overview, I think. Ray, does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
One thing I wanted to ask is how important, and you touched on this in another interview, but how important is routine in a time like this? Is this something that we really should pay a lot more attention to and set up a routine that kind of helps keep sanity, keeps us sane during this time, or I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Routine's interesting. So we're all creatures of habit, and basically what habit is your brain automating things that make it easy for you to live your life. Sometimes the habits that you get into aren't helpful, right? You call it routines, you can call them habits. They're just things that you've automated because your brain thinks it's important. So you might have made a habit or an automation out of worrying, or out of getting up late, or of, staying up late and watching Netflix, whatever it is. So habits are neutral. They're not necessarily good or bad. And I think it is important to pay attention to what habits you've established and which ones need to change. Because this is a very different moment, of course, you have to, we're kind of forced into this scenario where your habits are kind of under a microscope. And that can be a really fantastic opportunity to go, I have this moment to focus on developing myself in a way that's going to be beneficial for a long time to come. So in that way, it's a great opportunity. I can't say that there is a, one size fits all approach to routine. I think that you have to ask yourself the right questions so that you can adapt your routine to make sense for who you are. Some people like to get up early in the morning and that works for them. I am not one of those people. I can admit that freely. Some people only need 6 hours of sleep and they feel energized and they're good. I need more like 8 or 9 hours of sleep or I feel crazy. So it's important to be really honest with yourself about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. If you work well later in the day, then make sure you get enough sleep so that you start work later in the day. That's totally fine. But there are some things that are staples, of course. You have to get enough sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, your brain just isn't going to work as well. You need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep on average. People who say that, oh, I can function on 4 hours of sleep, then that would make you like a very strange statistical anomaly. Most people need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And there's no shame in needing 9 hours of sleep. That's just being human. You just have to sleep until you wake up, unless you have something urgent. But if you're going to sleep late and waking up early and thinking that, oh, I just need to get more stuff done, the amount of stuff you get done during the day is going to be that much less efficient. You're going to be less focused. It's going to be less thorough. The quality isn't going to be as high. The opportunities you're seeing in front of you are going to be less apparent. And so, you have to have a form of self-care. And the reason I say that's so important is because, again, these are strange circumstances. We're all really stressed out. If you're not dealing with that stress factor, then you're not going to be able to, get past that and find creative solutions to these weird moments. So I think a routine should include some form of exercise. Your brain works better when you exercise. It releases a chemical in your brain called BDNF, and you're able to access like the higher functions of your brain more easily. And everybody, it's almost like a cliche to be like, oh, you have to exercise, it's good for you. But especially now, it's almost insane. It's like not eating, it's like not sleeping. It's not exercising is on the same level. It's necessary. And we're not programmed to want to exercise because evolutionarily, like humans were always moving around. Like we didn't have to prioritize moving around. It was just a given. But nowadays, it's not a given. You can sit on your couch all day. You can be on the computer all day. And you don't have to prioritize exercising or moving your body in order to get things done in your life. Before, like if you wanted to eat, you like had to climb a tree and you got exercise. Now it's completely separate. So if you recognize that and you go, oh, okay, my body, my brain, they don't really want to exercise because you're programmed to think like, I already have exercise built in. So you have to go out of your way to convince yourself of the central importance of moving your body around. You don't have to be an athlete, but you can have like a 10-minute workout routine, and that can make a difference between success and kind of feeling lethargic throughout the day. And eating healthy is of course important. We have to have good immune systems, and another strong component of that is connecting with other human beings. You have to make that a priority as well. When you're connecting to other people, kind of like what we're doing right now, and you're seeing lots of faces and you're knowing you're part of a community, that has a significant effect. There's all kinds of research about the impact on your immune system, on your ability to think optimistically and to feel like you have a self-reported better well-being in general. So connecting to other people, talking to your family and your friends, getting out of your way. If you turn this into couch mode time where you're just gonna veg out, then it's gonna create kind of a downward spiral of feeling shitty, for lack of a better word. And it self perpetuates. So figure out the habits that work for you, the routines that work for you, but do it actively. Ask yourself what's going to work, and don't just default, because it may be that your default isn't actually helping you. So make sure you're challenging yourself.
That's so funny because like in theory, it seems like, okay, like work is gone. You've got all this time. The freedom is great. You can do all these things, that you haven't had time to do. But, like when that accountability is not there, like having to get up and do work or do work emails or go to work or something, it's so easy for us to fall back into sort of like lazy mode, I think. And so, yeah, I'm super big on the routine. I think I try to pretend like nothing, in a way, like nothing's changed, like still get up and get dressed and at the same time, I could sleep till whenever now, but like just having that routine, like, I don't know, I've noticed it really helps like mentally to keep me, I don't know, just in that work mode. So back to adaptation, like I'm really curious about adapting. So I think like what we do is really amazing because I think a lot of us just have naturally developed this ability to be able to adapt to not only different situations, but also to sort of different skills and even different jobs sometimes, because we're permanent professional freelancers, independent, a lot of us. So, like right now, like this is the time, right, where it's like kind of a make or break time where we've got to figure out like what's, like no one knows when is it going to end. If you're somewhere where there's a lockdown, like maybe you're stuck inside, like how do we, I know you're not a telling like a business coach, like do this to get work, but how do we put ourselves in the right mindset to be able to say, okay, I need to, like, I can't do this job. I can't go and take pictures right now for who knows how long. What can I do to get paid work? How can I shift that skill into something else to put myself out there and charge for it, and like, this is a really kind of a loaded question because there's so many degrees to which it gets complicated, like the imposter syndrome. Like if I feel really comfortable saying I'm a photographer or I'm a director. That's what I do. But am I also a teacher? Like, can I say that? Like, I have something I can share with. I have some knowledge of some things, but is it okay for me to go online and set up a a thing, a coaching or a teaching, like, let me teach how to take pictures virtually. Like, I know naturally a lot of times we just sort of have this self-guilt where we don't feel like we're worth, or what we're doing is worth charging for a certain amount, or, you know what I mean? Like, and I've always been really curious as to, like, sorry, that's my dog, where that comes from, that sort of sense of the imposter syndrome. We usually talk about this, like, it comes up every single ATL photo night session, but it's such a big part of being a freelance photographer. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe how it applies specifically to the time we're in now?
Yeah. Really good points, man. Is there an echo? No, maybe not. Okay. Hey, Kevin, we were talking recently, and I believe you agreed that it was going to be okay for me to call you out on this.
Yeah, no problem.
You mentioned that you were looking for another job, right? Could you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so this is scary times for a lot of folks, myself included. And I applied for a job at Publix and had an interview today. And I may be stocking shelves there by Friday. I don't know. For me, this is a personal decision. But for me, it's a way to keep doing something and going to something structured and feel like I'm providing. And that I'm doing something positive, because my schedule has been cleared. Like, I have nothing on the calendar, like so many people I know. And that's the first thing I thought of. It's like, let me do something, even if it's $200 a week. I don't care. Like, it'll be, I know there's dangers involved in that and going out and being around where people are. But yeah, this is something that happened over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. What is the kind of mindset that you have that led you to thinking, hey, it's okay for me to go and apply for this job?
So like I said, it's a number of things, but I had a lot of reservations in doing this. Like, I'm the team photographer for the Atlanta Braves. Like, I work for a lot of big publications and a full-time freelance photographer. And so doing this kind of thing is not something, number one, I'm not ashamed of it, but it took a minute to get there. It's like, I need to do something. And this is the discussion I had internally and with my wife about doing this. So, it was a big jump to get through that, but I don't mind stocking shelves. I did it when I was 16.
Can I ask you,
Sure.
and I'm asking, by the way, I'm asking Kevin for everybody, because I think that, myself included, a lot of us can relate to this sort of identity change that we have to make in order to step outside of the photographer identity, right?
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, but everybody can also ask themselves these questions. What was it you had to let go of in order to be able to make that change?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I identify deeply as a photographer and as an artist, and working at a national grocery store does not check those boxes. But the way I look at this, as it's temporary. I am still who I am. I'm still a creative professional. I'm not denouncing that. It's just a means to an end. It's an income stream. It's something more than anything. It's something to have structure and something to go to, do a good job, come home. That's going to do me personally, the way I operate. That's going to do me a world of good in this world of uncertainty. And I picked Publix because I like Publix, and grocery stores are going to be open during this time. It appears. So anything can change any day. But yeah, I mean, that identity is something that I did struggle with this, but I didn't let go of that. I'm not letting go of that. I'm just putting that aside for a second while I do something else on the side,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're getting some nice comments in the chat box. I encourage anybody who has questions or comments to go ahead and write something. Tracy Page is saying that society really needs help with that stuff, right? So it's also a potential to think about what other people need and how you're contributing outside of using the camera, right? So and I'm not sure, that's what it was for you necessarily, Kevin. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Sure. I mean, that's obviously part of it as well. It is a positive all the way around for me. Yeah.
right. So Casey says it's super encouraging. Anna says good job, good luck. Ray says truth. So it sounds like this is resonating around the room, and I'd like to ask everybody to think for a second, what are some skills that you have that are not photography that somebody else might value? I'm not saying what are you the ultimate master at. I'm just curious. And type it into the chat box if you can think of anything. Any skills that you have that someone else has less of.
Oh, Alex was actually a baker at Publix for 8 years.
Nice.
Wow.
Writing,
Mm-hmm.
editing, teaching photography.
Yeah, Paul is a painter.
Painter, copy editing.
So many skills.
So there's a lot of skills in this room, and I bet that if you were to dig a little bit more, you could come up with a long list of skills. I think the idea is that we strongly associate who we are with what we do, especially in America. That's, we're so work oriented. I know in New York, it's like off the charts. You don't have a life if you're not a workaholic. By the way, Clint has a question if you want to, what we can call him.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, we see the little hand raise. And so if you're able to separate yourself from that identity for a second, then you go, oh, wait a second. Photography is just such a narrow way of looking at yourself. You are so much more than your trade, than the job description. If you write down all of the competencies that you have related and unrelated to that job description. So let me give you an example. When I became a coach, I'd been a journalist for like a long time, for more than a decade. And for me, the transition ended up feeling somewhat seamless. And there was a lot to learn, but all of a sudden I realized I'm really good at listening. I'm good at communicating. I'm good at storytelling and understanding people's stories and narratives. I'm good at taking information, processing it, and putting it back out for people to understand it. I'm really good at observing, right? So these kinds of soft skills, these sort of intangible things, all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a second, this identity of journalist is just like these boundaries that I've drawn. But all of those skills, I could take them and put them into coaching, and they're still just as valuable, and there were some gaps to fill in, but it's still there. So as you're in your confinement, start thinking about that, start digging a little bit. What is it that you're really good at, or even slightly better than somebody else, right? For example, if you know how to play the guitar and you're like just okay at it, imagine you're probably better than 99% of the population at playing the guitar, somebody who's never played guitar before. So you could be a guitar teacher. That doesn't mean that you have to go out there and go, hey, I'm the greatest guitar teacher that ever lived, and take my $10,000 course and you're going to be famous. No, but you have something valuable that isn't related to your identity. So, so you have to examine that, right? And that's a process. But if you begin to ask yourself that question, you can, and the more times you ask it, you can start to explore more territory. We have a lot of biases, and we see the world as we want to see it. So if you see the world as I'm a photographer and that's the only thing I can do, then you're going to find evidence for that. You are going to find evidence for it. If you think I have a lot of skills and photographer is like just one of them, you're going to find evidence for it too. It's going to open your eyes to things that you may not have seen otherwise. So if you start having conversations with other people around you. And Ray, you also talked about accountability, and I think that is huge, especially right now. So if you can find ways, or friends, people who are willing to do some regular check-in, or even if it's just your mom or something, where you're having a conversation and you ask them like, hey, what skills do I have? How do you see me? You know, and try to get feedback from people. And you can ask for positive feedback. It doesn't have to be critical feedback, like what am I doing wrong? Think about it in terms of what am I doing right? What have I done well? What do people like about me? How do they see me? And asking for help in that way can give you like a icky feeling, like that imposter syndrome really comes up when you start asking for help, especially if it's like praise type of help, because you're like, who the heck am I to be asking for this? You know, like I don't deserve this kind of thing. You just have to recognize that that's happening in your head, and that it's something you have to deal with directly. You know, that is a voice in my head, and I have to acknowledge that it's there and speak to it. You know, befriend it, make friends with it, and then find systems, other people that can help you be accountable for the things that you can bring into the world, right? And the things that you decide that you're going to do. Set deadlines, project, this and that. Yeah, so we can go in a lot of different directions here, but I want to check in with you guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, I think right now is such a great time to sort of take on that accountability with your friends and other colleagues, like, because, you know, if this was a normal week, you know, I might think, oh, I would love to, you know, call Zach and get him to look at something that I've done, but you know what, he's probably busy, so I probably shouldn't. But like right now, like literally everyone is in the same boat. So I think now is a great time to actually lean into that accountability and actually combine it with like a creative endeavor. So maybe I'll call Kevin and Zach and we'll say like, okay, like I'm doing nothing tomorrow and for the next 3 weeks, why don't we like do it, challenge each other to some kind of, you know, like go shoot whatever picture of a subject and then you all, you know, like talk about it or, you know, something like that. So yeah, I think like the accountability part, I think there's a way to combine it with being productive and creative at the same time. That's more of a statement than a question, but I'm going to let Kevin field a few of these questions that we've gotten over the past couple of minutes. And then, so we'll click on a few people and unmute them. Kevin, you want to go ahead?
Can I jump in about what in response to what you just said for a sec?
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, Ray, that this is such an opportunity to connect with other people and and create, you know, be collaboratively creative in a way that normally you don't have time for, or you're concerned that somebody else is going to judge you or whatever. We're all in the same boat and we're all, you know, trying to find ways to make the most of this. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you could easily, you know, find somebody on the screen, click on their name, send them a private message and go, hey, like, can you check in on me on Wednesday to make sure I do this? Don't be shy, you know, go for it. Like, let's make friends. Let's connect right now. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah, because we are such, I wanted to bring this up because we are such lone wolves, right? I mean, that whole, like, you know, being a creative on your own, we all do this. We are our own CEOs in marketing and advertising and billing and everything. So we're so used to being that way that this is a challenge for a lot of us. But doing these things, taking these steps to be more accountable and reaching out to people is huge right now.
Look, we are wired. We're hardwired as human beings to need other human beings. Needing other people isn't a weakness. It's a basic necessity. It's like breathing air. Without other people, we are nothing. The reason that humans have outlasted 99% of species is because, and I don't say that frivolously, it's true, is because we're social creatures. The reason that like Neanderthals didn't survive as long as Homo sapiens is because Homo sapiens were able to collaborate. We were able to be social creatures. We were able to communicate with each other, collaborate, and do group projects. And at that time, group project meant like massacring the neighbor or whatever it was. You know, or one person in the society has a particular role and watches the kids while the other person in the society is the forager. And that group collaboration is what makes us strong. you know? So it is weird. It's kind of ironic now that we have this lone wolf thing as the strong person is the one who does it on their own independently. When in reality, if you think about who the most successful people are, it tends to be the people who are most connected, well connected. They know a lot of people. They're active socially. You know, that whole thing about it's who you know. So in reality, it's a kind of false icon that we have of that lone wolf, strong person. I know that in photography, and one of the things that was really hard for me personally, I mean, I'm an introvert, I'm like sensitive, I'm an artist, and you know, all these things. And photojournalism has this kind of like macho, badass kind of mythology around it. And that was always like really kind of made me feel uncomfortable, you know, and here I am like white male person saying this. So I can only imagine what it is for non-white male person in this industry, in that industry. But yeah, it's a falsehood. We need other people. So you need to reach out. You need to make that a priority just as much as, you know, exercising and these other things. Ask for help, band together with other people, and find people you can trust, you know, and stay away from people who are toxic and who are bringing you down, because that's not going to help. You know, that social comparison thing is something else we can talk about. That's like a whole other bucket.
Yeah. How about some questions?
Yeah. What questions do you guys have?
I thought I saw a few.
Didn't someone raise their hand, Kevin?
Yeah, he did. He did. Clint did. I just didn't see what question he had. I'm happy to call on him if he's still around and still.
Is Clinton?
Clint, are you? Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, he's there.
Yeah, let's see. Hey, Clint, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
No, I had lowered my hand. I just hit it by mistake. That's all.
All right. No problem at all. No problem at all. Here we go. You know, Danny, I've often heard that sometimes anxiety can be channeled creatively. Is that a misnomer? I mean, it seems, you know, the antithesis of creativity. Is that something that we can do to take this kind of energy and do something creative? A lot of us can't leave and, you know, it can work on projects or put together essays or things for the website, or I don't know. I mean, do you have any advice or anything on that?
Sure. There's this kind of, you know, another mythology around how artists are better when they're depressed.
Yeah, stressed and depressing.
You know, Kurt Cobain, right? All these like famously depressed geniuses. Okay, first of all, we're talking about, if you look at it on like a bell curve, these people are, you know, at one extreme, and maybe that's why they stood out so well. But the majority of people are not Kurt Cobain. That doesn't mean that you're not each individually extremely talented and capable. But it doesn't make sense to model yourself off of that sort of godlike creature who is depressed and somehow channels all of that into the most beautiful thing you've ever heard or seen. Most people don't function that way. In fact, it's the opposite. You have to define creativity for yourself, right? It's not the same for everybody, but creative thinking tends to be that like expansive thinking. It's when you think outside the box. It's when you have like these transcendental moments where you're connected to everything and you just understand things on a deeper level. That's like the sort of the traditional description of what creativity is. You might also think of it as a craft-oriented creativity. So getting really into the details of, let's say you're editing a photo in Photoshop and you're like zoomed in 3,000% into somebody's eyeball and you're like, you know, moving their color around. That's a different type of creativity. That's not expansive thinking. That's more like super detail-oriented thinking. So if you're stressed out and you want to take advantage of that, my suggestion is to do the kinds of work that require extreme detail focus and not trying to come up with lots of big ideas and solutions for what am I going to do with my business now that, you know, the normal amount of clients are not coming in. If you want to get into that expansive, creative, bigger picture thinking, then you have to deal with your brain. You have to calm your nervous system as step number one. Otherwise, you're going to be anxious and your brain is going to think narrowly. This comes from research from Barbara Fredrickson and a lot of others who have studied what happens in the brain when you're stressed, when you have a stress response. So if you calm your nervous system, you're going to be able to. So if you think about why you have such good ideas in the shower, why does everybody go to the shower? It's because if you were stressed out and you're thinking about one thing in a very specific way, then you take a shower. All of a sudden, you can't do anything else because you're in the shower. It's soothing. It's warm. You're singing opera music or whatever, and all of a sudden you have this light bulb moment. It's no coincidence. It's because suddenly you're relaxed. Your brain is changing. You're using a different part of your brain than you would normally, or than you would when you were trying to come up with your solution while also answering 15 emails and juggling, multitasking tabs and going insane. So yes, I guess the answer is yes, you can channel anxiety or stress into creativity. You just have to be clear about what's realistic at that very moment and what you need to do to get into the right mode that you want to be in, right? What is the goal that you actually want to achieve right now? And are you working against your own interest if you're trying to come up with a super big expansive solution while being in this kind of blinder state of mind?
Yeah. I want to go to, Casey had a really good question about getting stuck in a certain mindset. Casey, do you mind if I unmute you and ask that question to Danny? See if I can do that. There, is it?
There you go. Yeah.
So I worked at Kroger for a long time. I worked there in college for 6 months, and then I didn't work there for a while. And then after college, I worked there again for another 6-month stint. And it was kind of really depressing, I guess. It was hard to realize that this is not all I was a person that worked at Kroger. And I would freelance on the side, and I would try to remind myself that I'm a creative person, I'm a photographer, this isn't what I want to do forever. But I think it was really easy for me to just mentally, have the blinders up and be like, this is forever. This is, I'm not going to, I guess I have a tendency to, wherever I am right now, I project that out forever. And it's this is always what it's going to be like. It's never going to be different. And then I would have my managers get ticked off that I had to go take an assignment or something and I couldn't pick up a shift. And so it was I'm trapped. And so finally getting out of that, finally not needing to have that job anymore, felt like a really big triumph. And I think Alex said something about it's a big pride thing. It would take a huge hit to my pride, I guess, to go back once again for the third time and go work at Kroger. So, I mean, I admire that Kevin, that you're able to do that. That's so that's awesome. And I feel like it would take a stronger person than I to go back and do it again. So how would you, I guess, recommend being able to avoid that mindset again?
Yeah, thanks, Casey. That's really brave of you to share. So thank you for putting it out there, first of all. The more that we share with other people what's going on with us, it's kind of freeing. And I think others are in similar situations, if not the exact same situation. And when you share with others and you open yourself up, you're a little more vulnerable, and then others can go, hey, wait a second, kind of feels like what I'm going through too. So I acknowledge you for that, Casey. Thanks. And look, there's no I can't give you the magical solution to that situation. It sounds like you have to think through it, and there's more there. It's like an iceberg kind of situation. But you have to do what's right for you. I mean, Kevin is in a particular situation, and it's not yours, and it doesn't make sense to compare. It's not apples to apples. So whatever is the first of all, a necessary thing for you, because right now we're in a state of necessity. If you don't have your basic needs met, then you have to do what is going to satisfy your basic needs, right? If you have to have a roof over your head, you have to have food, you need to do the things that are going to keep you in basic survival, right? So whatever that is. Sometimes that means swallowing your pride and doing something you don't like to do. But in, desperate times call for desperate measures, right? So don't neglect your needs. Ask yourself the question, what do I need? I think that's a really powerful question in general too. What do I need? And it's something that we don't ask ourselves enough. in coaching, it's something I ask a lot. What do you need? Because if you're able to pause and go, all right, how can I take care of myself right now? Instead of doing the thing that I feel pressured to do, or I feel like, others are going to judge me for doing. Excuse me. I don't have coronavirus. So, if I did, it's not contagious through the screen.
We're going to check on you tomorrow.
Right. So ask yourself what you need, Casey and all, what do you need right now? What's going to help you right now? Be good to yourself.
Yeah.
If you're able to have self-compassion, that sort of enables you to have self-care, right? Self-compassion leads to self-care. Does that make sense?
Oh, wait, he's muted. So yes, he's nodding his head.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Rhetorically asking.
Sure.
If you have self-compassion, you forgive yourself for whatever it is you feel guilty about, and you're like, hey, it's okay, I'm only human. I need to handle this the way that makes sense for me. Mm-hmm. Then you'll be able to take some sort of action that is about self-care. And look, this isn't like woo-woo, I'm not like some sort of guru, like, I don't know. Like, I'm talking about this in a very practical sense, in a psychological sense. If you allow your brain to help you, it will, Don't fight against yourself.
We've got another question from Nikki. I'm going to unmute her and see what she's got to say. Let's see. Nikki, can you hear us? This feels like a radio call-in show.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. No, so as a new business owner, I don't do this full time, but being that we're kind of locked in, I am struggling with creativity. How do you guys, I guess, deal with that? Like, for the most part, I sit on my balcony, and if I can catch a bird or a squirrel or something, I take pictures of that. But I mean, just getting out, because I'm an outdoors type of person. So of course, I'd rather be doing that or hiking or, something like that. So in the meantime, just to stay creative, what are you guys doing?
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Yeah, good question. I was, I think we're probably obviously all struggling with that. That was the first thing that I started to freak out about, because if I can't, I learned a long time ago, if I can't, if I go a certain like length of time without some kind of creative like output, I just get, I get really pent up and just not in a good mindset. So I myself have been trying to figure out, things that I can do. I'll just share one thing I'm doing personally. Maybe it's helpful. I've kind of reverted to, student photographer mindset, where I'm just photographing my people I know, my family members, using them, setting up like in my house, like whatever I can do. We started, my family and I started like a series. So we're doing a picture a day, and I'm like sort of just setting something up, and, it probably won't ever be anything. I'll probably share it, but, it's just to get that like release, just to do it is helpful for me.
One thing I'm doing right now is, this didn't really fall into creative. I don't know if this is creative. It can be, but I'm learning Spanish on an app, Duolingo, and I don't know Spanish. So this is like, this is really hard for me, but it makes it fun. It's totally something completely outside of like photography and business and work and all that. And I do it 15, 20 minutes a day. And that kind of helps get me out of a lot of the mindset, fear that I've been in. It's one small thing, but it's something that I've been doing.
It's a great opportunity to level up right now. you can think of this as I'm confined and I can't do anything, or you can think of this as I get to be completely focused on whatever I want right now. You can, there's so much online education right now. You can study pretty much anything you want.
Yeah.
You can, if you're into lighting, you can start learning portrait lighting if you have like a flash somewhere. You can learn a new language. You can take business courses, which I think photographers don't do enough of. Marketing and business.
Yes, business classes more. Yes.
Classes are extremely important. You can find ways of collaborating with other people and brainstorming, creating your own little mastermind group where you help each other out. And if you're doing it with other people, it's going to be a lot easier than if you're doing this yourself. And if you're having those conversations with other people, and if you're not afraid to reach out and just say, hey, I don't know what to do right now. What are you doing? And just try and gain inspiration. One thing I would say is that there's a tendency to be online all the time now. People are on the internet, and there's a lot of good things on the internet. Like we're getting some people jumping in. There's a problem with that, and that is the news. We have a negativity bias. We always see the negative first because evolutionarily that keeps us safe, right? We have that programmed into our brain. We see the negative things first and we overemphasize the negative. There's no exact ratio of negative to positive in terms of what will make you, succeed or whatever. But I know that in relationships, they say you have to have like a 5-to-1 positive to negative ratio in order to predict a successful marriage, for example. On a daily basis. And I think the same is true with the internet, except the news is there to report on all of the terrible things happening in the world. The news is not there to make you feel good. The news is there to report on you freaking out about what's going on. And so you will always find evidence that the sky is falling every time you go on the internet. So if you try and focus more specifically on what it is you want, right? I'm going to go online right now and find a business course. Okay, now you have a mission. And try not to open 15 tabs at the same time because we're not built for multitasking either. And use the internet as a tool for satisfying your goals, as opposed to going to the internet expecting that it's going to solve things for you by default. Because the opposite is going to happen if that's how you go in. It's going to prey on your lack of focus. It's going to prey on your fear and insecurity, and it's going to take you down that rabbit hole of news and terrible things that are happening.
Yeah.
So before you go online, come up with what is it that I'm going online to do specifically. Write it down on a piece of paper, on an actual, piece of paper with a pencil. And there's a difference between that and doing it on your computer. The act of writing things down, journaling, writing it down, means your brain has to translate your thought into words and then into a physical act of writing things slowly. And it makes a big, Barbara says, I've heard of paper. It's true, yes. It's this new thing, it's made from trees. And I think that will help you find solutions for creativity as opposed to, like I said, going online and hoping that you're going to land on something and it's going to solve everything. It's unlikely it's going to work that way. You have to be proactive and help yourself, knowing what your brain is likely to do, that it's going to go negative. It's going to go negative.
That's really powerful to know that's going to happen and prepare for it and set yourself up so that you don't, or not so easily, you can't do that so easily, right?
Yeah, negativity bias is so powerful. It's what has kept us alive for a very long time. And it's like, it came about because back in the day, if you heard, let's say, the sound of a twig snapping in the distance, it could mean there was a predator and it was going to come and kill you. So anything that's threatening, that's potentially threatening, you're going to pay attention to. So if it's a headline that says like, the economy is crashing and Trump declares war on science, whatever it is, and then you're gonna respond very strongly to that. It's going to create a physical reaction in your body that's very powerful and very hard to overcome. So if you anticipate that, oh yeah, I'm human. Oh, that's right, I'm human. I forgot. I'm not just a robot attached to the internet. That you're going to have that negative response much more than you're going to have a positive response in general. You have to outdo the negative response like times 5 in order to actually convince yourself that things are going well.
Fascinating.
You have to get in front of it. What other questions do you guys have? Feel free to type them in or raise your hand.
We got time for a couple more. KG here had a great idea, said that he or she is working on or thinking about doing a self-portrait project, tapping into the internal experience and our collective situation. I really, really like that.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I think you can't like, a lot of times we're afraid to fail, or, you know, like we're kind of waiting for this amazing idea that no one's ever thought of before, and then we're going to do it, you know, like, but I think a lot of times you just do something, just do it, just do something. And maybe it's terrible, but you know, who cares? Like, that's how you get better. That's how you go through self-discovery, and, you know, just do it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So there's a concept called growth mindset. And you asked, I think at the very beginning, like, what kind of mindset do we have to have? And I think having a growth mindset, and I'll explain what that is crucial. And I see that Clint also has his hand up, in case he has a question.
See. Oh, there you are, Clint. Okay.
So the growth mindset comes from research from Carol Dweck. You can look up Carol Dweck. She has TED Talks and books and things like that. She's been doing research on mindset for like 30 years. And she found that there is like the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, these two big categories. And essentially the growth mindset is having an incremental theory about your success. It's believing that through effort and failure, you're going to get better, as opposed to a fixed mindset, which is, I'm going to be successful because I deserve it, because I'm smart, because I'm talented, because somebody told me once that my portfolio was amazing. Or the other way around, when somebody told me once that my portfolio sucks. And having that idea that things are the way they are. So having a growth mindset and believing that you have to work in increments, which means inherent failure. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it that way, failure doesn't really even exist anymore, right? Because when you screw something up or something doesn't go well, it's an opportunity to learn and to get better. If you actually believe that that's what's going to happen. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you believe that, it will happen because you will behave differently. If you believe that failure will lead to improvement, then you will fail and you will try again and you will learn something. You will fail, you will try again, you will learn something. And that process will be more enjoyable also, because you'll go into it thinking, it's fine if I don't get this right. I just want to get like a tiny, tiny bit better and feel good about that and learn from it.
Yeah, just being satisfied with the effort that you did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and paying attention to the small wins too. People tend to be riding this like treadmill, expecting that they're going to get to the end of the race, but they're really just on a treadmill, you know, chasing the carrot, like the dangling carrot. The hedonistic treadmill. And sorry, sometimes there's an echo. But it doesn't work that way. It's not, you know, you have to get off the treadmill and take tiny little baby steps, right? It's not about getting to the finish line of success. It's about re-examining and going, all right, what did I do in the last hour that was successful? What was something I said in that conversation that was good, even if the conversation wouldn't be like framed as a successful conversation? What was one thing that you learned from that? And if you start looking for those wins, then you emphasize that positive, because again, your brain's going to go to the negative. It's going to find the ways that things sucked, the way things didn't work out, the criticisms, the failures. But you have to actively look for those positive things. You have to go against your own nature and say, what were the things that worked? You're going to learn from that, incrementally grow. So in terms of finding a project while you're in quarantine, try stuff out. Go around, do something that's really stupid 50 times, with your camera, and take pictures that don't work and sketch it out, and look at it like it's a sketchbook, and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Make some mistakes, go make a fool of yourself, and something might come out of it if you're asking the question, okay, I don't like this. Fine. What do I like about it? What potential is there in this? What other things does it lead to? How does it branch out into more ideas? So that's that growth mindset that you can have while you're quarantined that may lead to something, just kind of follow those breadcrumbs.
Awesome.
I'm going to unmute Clint here and see what his question is. Clint, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So I guess it's more of a statement than a question, and it kind of touches on creativity, kind of going back again, being a student, and the projects, starting a new project. And I'm going back through old images and really taking another look at them and reworking them, because I've learned, I went digital in 2001, 2002. Prior to that, I shot film for, years. And so I have thousands of negatives and thousands of slides that I need to go through and digitize. But I'm also looking at that old digital work, because there's been so many changes in the creative software we use. Photoshop, Camera Raw, Lightroom, all these different changes. You can really go back and learn some of the mistakes that you didn't know that you made, and try to make corrections and learn from what you've done before. And you might find hidden gems that you haven't seen before, and produce a new body of work from what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Great idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're using things differently now than when you took the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about photography, right? It's a frozen moment in time, and then when you go back and look at something you shot 15 or 10 or whatever years ago, you often can remember where you were, how old you were, what you were feeling, what kind of relationship you were in, all these other things. And I found that can be its own way of sort of self-discovery and sort of looking inward. And by going, it's because you're kind of like going back through these memories in a way, and I've done that personally. It's been super helpful, mining the old, the work, which we all have like, terabytes of, right? Danny, I'm gonna so we're gonna go ahead and end the session in a few minutes because Danny has to get to another appointment. But before we do that, Danny, do you want to say a few final things and also announce the winner?
Oh yeah, sure. So first of all, I hope this has been helpful. What we talked about, and also just being in a room with a bunch of people. I see some really nice comments on there. I know someone was talking about getting together and doing some sort of Sarah was saying no, Kaylin. Anyway, a bunch of people talk to each other about, that's great. I can't keep track. Talk to each other about collaborative projects. Now you're not in this alone. Everyone else wants this in one way or another. So get in touch with one another. People are so important at this time. So it's not social distancing; it's physical distancing.
There you go.
We need social intimacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just doesn't have to be physical right now. We have the technology. We can take advantage of that. Think about the skills that you have that aren't photography, or think about how you can serve. Put yourself. That's something I forgot to say that I really wanted to mention before. Service. If you're thinking about yourself and woe is me, right, which is natural. It's the state that we go into when we're stressed. We're protecting ourselves. If you're thinking that way, you're not finding solutions that can help your business. You're thinking about, how do I protect myself? Which means going back to the default thinking that you always do, right? Those sources aren't available right now. Those emergency sources that you can go to get jobs may not be available right now. So you can't think that way. What got you here won't get you there. So think in terms of service. Put yourself in other people's shoes and think, what does everybody else need? And then start thinking, what do I have that other people need? It might be guitar lessons. You know what I mean? Like, people need ways to distract themselves. You might have a skill that you can offer other people. I'm not talking about being opportunistic and like selling people shit they don't need, right? We're not talking about being a bad person here. We're talking about being in service. Actually, how can I serve other people? How can I provide something for someone else? How can I make somebody's day better? And lo and behold, I think you might come up with an idea for business also. People are still willing to spend money if it's something that is actually going to help them. If it's not going to help them, then just don't sell it to them. Don't try to sell people things they don't need. But if someone's like, God, I'm so bored, I wish I had a way to learn an instrument. And you're like, oh wait, I know how to play guitar. I'll teach you that. You can do it for free or not. It's up to you. But try to think in terms of service. Put yourself in that service mentality. And it feels good too. It feels good to help people. We're also programmed to want to help other people. When you ask for help, not begging, not like, oh, I feel so bad for asking for help. That doesn't feel good. When you say, hey, who's on my screen right now? Hey, Leia, can you, hi. Hey, you know what? I've been stuck on figuring out my website, and I heard that you're good at that. Could we have a conversation about that? Do you think you could help me out? I'm just sorry to pick on you, Leia. I don't know if you're if you're a website guru or anything. But Leia will likely go, hey, maybe I'm not an expert, but like I know a few things, and it feels good to help. So by asking, you'd be surprised, and you give somebody else an opportunity to be of service. And now, we all kind of bored and sitting around wanting to be useful. We want to have a purpose. So give someone else the opportunity to be purposeful. So what else? I said that if you filled out the survey, that you'd be entered into a raffle for a free session. So let me go over to this survey and pick somebody at random. I'll close my eyes and let's see. Just bear with me for a second. Download these things. All right, so I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm gonna point at my screen, and whoever I point to will get a free coaching session if they want it. Okay. Okay, I pointed way off the screen. All right, let me try.
This is amazing.
We have Tammy.
See.
Tammy Chappelle.
Oh, Tammy Chappell. Yeah, let's get here. Let's
Chappell.
see. Let me unmute Tammy for a second. TLC? Is that
Yours. Yes.
Tammy, is that you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Cool.
You just won a free session with Danny.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, cool.
No problem.
And this has been very informative.
Oh,
Awesome.
great.
Glad to hear that.
Thank you.
So I'll be in touch with you after, and we'll do that. But look, everybody here can get a 30-minute session free if you want to talk. Again, I don't believe in selling you shit you don't need, so I'm not going to do that. But if you just want to talk about this or have any questions or whatever, like just go to my website. It's fullframecoaching.com. I'm happy to just chat. If you're interested in coaching, I can tell you about what that is, what that looks like. But otherwise, I would just love to get to know you and brainstorm with you or just share resources or whatever. What else? Was there anything else, Ray? That I was
think that's it. We'll make sure that we get you connected with the contact for Tammy. Just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to do this. It's just one small part of the puzzle that we're all trying to assemble during this, this crazy time. And so we genuinely appreciate it. I hope that it was helpful for everyone who came. Kevin and I are working on other things that we can do to sort of keep this momentum going. We don't want to just sit back and, wait for it to end. We want to keep the positive momentum going. So definitely follow us on our website is atlphotonight.com, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook too, ATL Photo Night, because we'll be posting ways to continue this. What other sessions we're going to do, or who knows? Like it's kind of wide open. But also, that's a resource for you guys to connect with one another. You can email us through there or send us a DM, and we can, if you're like, oh, can you get me, Kevin and I were chatting during the session, but I don't have his contact. Just hit us up. We would love to connect you guys so that you could collaborate on something during this weird time. And we wish you all the best. We're going to just play it by ear like all of you. And so we'll be back in physical proximity soon enough. Maybe it's April or May or down the road. But until then, we'll keep doing things virtually. So thank you again. Thank you, Danny, one more time. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
And we'll see you all again soon. Cool? All right. Bye, everybody.
Hey guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.